Alright, so now I just got this running. It was really cold, couldn't get it to run, and it seemed to flood almost immediately. So I pulled the spark plug out, it was really wet, cleaned it up on a wire wheel, put it back in, and it started right up. I also did preheat the motor a little bit with my propane space heater because it's so cold out here. I also made sure I had a good charge on the battery. So it started right up. Idle was a little high, so I adjusted the well, here we go now. It's sitting here doing nothing, and all of a sudden it's starting to race for no reason. So that's interesting. Here's a choke. It's off, according to what I've learned. If I try and turn it on, it actually causes the motor to race. So now I'm going to turn the throttle adjustment down. The idle. Alright, so I brought the idle adjustment down. Now it's idling again. Throttle response doesn't seem too bad. Again, there's no air box. And what's particularly puzzling still, though, is when I turn the choke on. Oh, now it's... Huh. That's interesting. Suddenly it just started working differently. Alright, so now the choke's off. If I turn the choke on, starts to kill it. That's what I would expect with the engine hot. So it suddenly just started working more normally. It's interesting. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and tweak that pilot air screw adjustment on the bottom of the carburetor now that the engine is running and is hot. Alright, well, what ended up happening was I ended up backing down the driveway okay, and I decided to take it down the road, see what would happen, and found out that every time I tried to open up the throttle it would just backfire badly and die, or want to die, and if I would keep the throttle pressed it would shut off. So what I ended up having to do was limp it back to the house, basically at just barely above idle speed, and got it back here, and as I turned into the driveway it started throttling up on its own and died. So let's see what happens. It's idling. Alright, the idle might be a tad low right now. Alright, so I'm going to leave the idle set there. And there it goes. Not touching anything, not touching the throttle at all. And it dies. So that's what it's doing now. It seems like I might have the pilot air screw setting correct now, because it does want to run correctly for just a couple of minutes, and then it starts racing like that and dies. Almost as if it's running out of fuel. So I don't know. Maybe when it sits. Now I'm wondering whether or not I've got the float misadjusted. If I've got the float misadjusted, what might be happening is it might be running correctly off the fuel that's in the float bowl, and then as the
fuel in the float bowl starts to run down too low, it starts to lean out, and then it runs out of fuel. And then as it stalls, it sits there and enough fuel leaks back into the bowl and fills the bowl back up, and that's why I'm able to restart it, and it runs again. So maybe that's what's going on here. It might be something as simple as just the height adjustment in the for the float might be incorrect. So I don't know, I hope that's what it is.
Okay, this is day 2 of working on the carburetor problem. I took the carburetor out this morning and took the bowl off, and looking at the float, looks like I may have over adjusted the float to a point where it might be closing too early. That might be part of the problem. Also, I just noticed when I blow into this tube with the float open, it does feel like it's got a bit of a restriction, so I'm going to take the needle seat out and check that screen to make sure there isn't some debris or something in there. Alright, I took this carburetor apart. I took the needle seat out for the float, and this little tiny screen that's on the back side here was clogged with this goop right here. And I had cleaned this when I had taken it all apart before, so judging from the consistency of it, it's probably a little bit of RTV sealant that had inadvertently got in there when I put a little bit on this seam right here for the bowl, because I wanted to make sure that gasket was going to seal, because I was reusing the old gasket, and somehow some of it might have gotten in there, I don't know. But anyways, actually, now that I think of it, a more likely scenario is that the primer, which is on the bowl, when I reassembled that, I used RTV sealant on that, and I bet you that's where that RTV sealant broke free and went through the line here and then got caught by this screen. So that makes a lot more sense. But that would definitely be a cause of why the bowl was filling too slowly. Now I'm going to open up the primer assembly here and check for any more stray RTV sealant that might be in there. I don't want to go through the trouble of reinstalling this whole thing and just having it another piece of RTV break free and get in there and clog that screen again. And there's the culprit. You can see all the sealant in there. That's just not good. So, alrighty, I'll clean that out and hopefully it'll solve the problem. Alright, a few days ago I came out here and started up the Arctic Cat after determining that, getting some good information on the internet, finding out that this position right here is the choke off, and all the way down is the choke on, like that. Actually, it doesn't even want to go all the way down because it's a little frozen. But anyways, point being is that now that I knew that that was the correct position, I came out here, and previously what was happening was when I was flipping the lever all the way up to what I thought was choke on, the engine would rev. Then when I realized that what was actually happening was it was revving with the choke off, I decided maybe I just had everything misadjusted. So I started it up, got it running, turned the choke off once it was warm, and then basically brought the RPMs down on the idle adjustment, and it actually seemed like it was working pretty well. And I didn't really have time to do much that day, so I quit at that point. And then today I tried starting it, and it wouldn't start. It would just kind of give a little cough, and that was about it. And I couldn't get it to start. And I remember the last time it was doing that, part of the problem was that the plug had fouled. So I decided this plug had enough time in there anyways. You can actually see it's pretty gunked up. So decided to invest in a new plug today. Now there was a technical service bulletin on these as far as cold start issues go, and it was actually a 3-part fix to that. And part number 1 was a Arctic Cat kit to do some changes to this carburetor. I'm not sure exactly what they were, probably a different size jet maybe, and I'm not sure. Somebody else also mentioned something about a primer kit, which maybe have had something to do with
doing something with that primer on the other side. Unfortunately, that's no longer available. Another part of the technical service bulletin was changing the spark plug to a different number. And when I took that Arctic Cat number and I plugged it into the computer, the internet there, it crossed to an NGK CR6E. And that is interesting because what was in this was a CR8E. So that might be, this might be like an original or a much older plug. So now I've got the Autolite version of that plug, which is a 4302. So I got a new one of those. I'm going to put that in. And then we're going to see whether or not we can get this to start in this cold, cold weather. The temperature conditions right now, it's about 20 degrees Fahrenheit without the wind chill. Alright, so now I've got the new plug installed, and we're going to see what happens when I try and start it. First thing I'm going to do is turn on the fuel. And now I'm going to give 2 pumps of the primer here. 1, 2. Definitely hear fuel squirting when I do that, so I'm going to put the choke in as close to on as I can get. It doesn't want to go all the way down because, again, it's frozen. And turn the ignition on and see what happens. Starts right up. I'm going to let it warm up a little longer and see how it acts. Alright, looks like the choke liver is thawed out enough, so it's working now. If I turn it down, if I put the choke off, the engine stops racing. Now with the choke, there we go. Looks like maybe now it's starting to That's a little more like it. I'm going to take it for a ride and see what happens. How you doing? Alright, well I'm gonna need to put the video down to turn around. Alright, back on the road again. Alright, well, right now I'm pretty satisfied with the way it's running. I didn't really push it too hard because
basically I'm holding the video camera with one hand and driving with one hand, and that was about as fast as I wanted to go without having both hands on the handlebars. So, but for now, it looks like it's running okay. So the big question is, how's it going to act tomorrow when it's cold again and I go to start it? So anyways, signing off for now.